Blaine Fowler joining us now in Studio B. Uncle B, national champion.
Thanks,
handsome as ever, Blaine.
Thanks, Julius.
Hey, you're welcome. Yes, and you
right side or left side, strong side.
Gary Bertier. And
Gary Bertier.
You got it,
You cannot replace a Gary Bertier.
Cannot replace.
Remember the Titans is such a great movie.
I think it's the best sports movie. Either that or Rudy. Best sports movies of all time.
It's Rudy for me.
And I like Miracle too, but I can watch Remember the Titans and Rudy 100 times.
Yeah,
each.
whenever Remember the Titans on, it's like I'm
fun.
going to watch this.
Unbelievable.
It's fun. Like it won't make me cry. Rudy would make me cry.
Yeah, Rudy makes me cry every time.
Yeah, I love it.
How
the
do
music,
you not cry?
Sometimes on Sunday mornings, I listen to the theme song to Rudy.
Yes.
So, sorry to distract you, Julius, but you threw that out there, brother.
Fun fact: if you want to watch Rudy, it's on demand on the BYUtv app. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on demand.
There you go.
Yes.
And I believe very edited from the swear words. It's on our
That's good, though. That's good.
Yeah.
The G-rated Rudy.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to T.C. Williams High School as well. Blaine Fowler.
In Virginia.
Our Twitter question today. BYU is 1-3. How do you feel, and what are your expectations for this team going forward?
I don't know if you remember back at the beginning of the year, I thought 8 was a good win total, but I hoped that they would go 2-2 in their first 4. And so I still think that 7 is a reasonable target for them. And I won't be flabbergasted if they get 8, but I will be surprised if they don't win 6 of these last 8. I think they will. And I saw some things from the sideline, standing right by the bench most of the game on Saturday, that were really encouraging to me, especially in the second half. I felt like the light bulb for the offense went on in the second half of this football game, where the timing seemed right, where confidence seemed to rise. And, so they get a pick on the tip ball at the end. But I think they felt like they were going to go down and win that ball game when they got the ball. And think about it. They had to overcome the first tip ball interception when they should have handily gone down and won the game. And I didn't even see that hurt their confidence. And then West Virginia gave them the gift back down on the 5-yard line. So it's like, hey, you know what? You guys gave us a gift, so we feel really, really bad about it. So we're going to give you a gift back. But I feel like those last 2 drives, BYU had the confidence that they were going to go down and they were going to score and they were going to win and things were clicking. And people, make no mistake, that was a away football game. West Virginia was playing a home football game. Their video staff was running the video board. Their crowd was 3 times BYU's. Their band was in the house. It was moved a few hours away from their campus, but it was their home game. So it was a true road game for BYU. On third downs, their loudspeaker, announcer was on third down and getting them jumping and all that. When it was third down for West Virginia and BYU's on defense, BYU's crowd was trying to, but they weren't getting any help from the PA announcer or any of that. It was all West Virginia. So a true road game, and they go down to the wire in it. So I walked away from that. Dave McCann and I were talking as we were getting ready to do the postgame show, and I said, they're 1-3, and I feel good about where they're at, which is weird.
It is
to
weird.
me. So yeah, I think that 7 wins is not out of the question. So, and I want to give you guys a parallel. Okay, can I give you a parallel?
Absolutely.
Please, Uncle B.
So my son Landon over the weekend, I was telling him I feel good and I don't know why. And Landon said, Dad, let me tell you something I thought about. Nebraska. I'm going, what? I don't get it. What's Nebraska? And he goes, Nebraska fired Bo Pelini. So Pelini leaves after a 9-4 season when they lost in a bowl game, in a close bowl game to
sounds
USC.
familiar.
Okay, so sounds familiar, right? They bring in Mike Riley, who says, we're not going to run the spread anymore. That doesn't fit here at Nebraska. We're going to change to a more pro style. We'll do multiple sets, but it's going to be more pro style. We can recruit big hosses. In the long term, we're going to rebuild this thing to have success in the Big Ten in the long haul. So they go out, and in their first 6 games, they go 2-4. And they lose to BYU 28-33.
On the final play.
Miami 33-36 in overtime.
5-3.
Illinois 13-14.
1.
Wisconsin 21-23.
2.
Wow.
There's a team that had
and they
4 games
and they just
within
couldn't
3
figure out
points.
how to win at the ends
5 points.
because they hadn't been in that offense long enough to understand where the big plays come in clutch time. But they were learning against really good competition, right? Now their 2 wins were against South Alabama and Southern Miss. Okay, so they're gonna beat those teams, right? So now in the back half, now remember, Nebraska only went 5-7 last year, but in the back half they played number 6 and number 3. They played Michigan State and Iowa. And, oh, by the way, they beat number 6 on the road.
Yeah, how about that?
And they lost to Iowa. But down the stretch, they beat Michigan State. They beat Rutgers. They beat UCLA in their bowl game. They lost in the back half to Iowa. So they finished 5-7. They got into a bowl game and won that bowl game and finished 6-7 because there wasn't enough eligible teams. So, but in the back half of their schedule,
they got better.
I think the light bulb went on in a loss to Northwestern for them, where they lost 28-30. But their offense looked like it was starting to click. And I did a bunch of research after landing. I'm like, oh, and then they go on and they finish strong. And it's okay when you lose at Iowa when they were number 3, right? Mm-hmm. So now what's Nebraska doing this year? They're 4-0 and ranked in the top 15. And they already have wins over Oregon and Northwestern. Because now it's a carryover from last year, and they get it. And they know where the big plays are right now. So it wasn't necessarily that they needed a whole bunch of new players and they needed Mike Riley's guys recruited it. The players they had were good enough. He didn't take over a losing program. Kalani didn't take over a losing program, but it's an adjustment on offense. I think the defense is way ahead of where they were. And guess what? BYU doesn't play number 6 and number 3 in the back half of their schedule. So instead of 5-7 like Nebraska was, I think BYU's got a legitimate shot to be 7-5 or 8-5 because I think their light bulb went on in the second half of West Virginia. So there's your parallel. Look at Nebraska. Similar situation. And Mike Riley is the kind of guy that creates an environment like Kalani's creating at BYU where they have confidence. The kids still believed even though they were losing some games. This is where we're at. So I think it's Landon, my son Landon, who played at BYU, I think that parallel is a good parallel. It's not that far off, but BYU's schedule in the last 6 isn't as crazy as Nebraska's was in the last 6.
Absolutely. And I think hope is a powerful emotion. And I think that BYU still has hope because these games were close and BYU goes, we didn't make a couple plays. It wasn't like BYU was overpowered. BYU's played some games in the past. At Wisconsin 2013 where it was a 10-point game, but you're like, listen, that was not as close as it looked in the end. But BYU hung with and plays these teams. Now they play a Toledo team that we know is good, but we don't know how good. What do you think of Toledo?
They're a little bit scary because I think offensively they're dangerous. They're similar offensively to what they saw against Arizona and even what they saw against West Virginia. They spread you out, the quick throw game, they do all of that. The difference is that Toledo's not going to be quite as physical up front as those two teams. And I think BYU defensively will fare better. They may give up a big play here and there. And, they're scoring like crazy, but Toledo hasn't been smacked in the face like they will by BYU this week because they just haven't played teams so far in their schedule that are that level. Now, keep in mind, Toledo historically has stepped out of their league and been able to get up for a game here and there against P5 type programs like BYU and have fared well. So they have the confidence that they can do that, but they've got to travel, as you mentioned, Spencer, on a short week.
Yes.
Julius, on a short week and have to come to Provo, play at elevation against a team that's really, really hungry and I think is really, really good defensively. Don't get too concerned over West Virginia and what they did because I believe West Virginia is going to do that all year in their league. The teams in the Big 12 are built right now to score points. They have a hard time stopping each other. So they're going to do that to a lot of teams.
Did that not feel like a Big 12 game?
It felt like a Big 12 game. Now, I think BYU, when they get into the Big 12, will be like the Stanford of the Pac-12. They'll load up and manhandle people up front, and they'll play a different style. And that's what Kalani's building this thing for, is to be able to create mismatches up front, play like a professional, like a pro team, like an NFL team. And I think that BYU, by the time they get in the Big 12, will create some problems for those teams matching up. They'll keep the ball away from them. They'll be physical. They'll win games like the one they just lost to West Virginia.
What is the biggest issue or concern with BYU football right now? Because we're 1-3, and you said I feel hopeful. What's the biggest issue with this team right now? Is it points off turnovers, or is it something else?
I think that's it, and that comes with confidence. So right now they're not converting their turnovers into enough points. They're averaging just about 2 points per turnover, and they need to average more like 4 points per turnover. And if you think about it, as close as these games have been, if they average 4 points per turnover that they acquire, they're either 3-1 or at worst 2-2. They're probably 3-1. They might even be 4-0 at that point, especially against Utah with the disparity in turnovers and the disparity in points off of turnovers. If they're productive off of turnovers, and so to me that's a confidence thing. And confidence comes with success. So I think this offense had more success at West Virginia. Now they're playing Toledo. I think they'll move the football in Toledo and get more confidence. So now when they go to Michigan State, they'll have more confidence in short fields to convert into, not settle for field goals, but convert short fields and turnovers into touchdowns, and that will make the difference down the stretch. So that's my biggest concern. They need to have some success against Toledo to carry and build on what they just had against West Virginia offensively, because to me that's all about confidence. That's my biggest concern.
And they need to win the game. If BYU wants to go to a bowl game and wants to, win 6 of the last 8, this is a must-win for BYU. We talked about it last week. Is this a must-win against West Virginia? Against Toledo at home, that's a game you have to win.
No, I agree. And here's the thing. So keep in mind, we go back to this Nebraska parallel. They get 6 of the last 8, or even if they only get 5 of the last 8 and get to a bowl game, this is a program that has the parts and pieces to do what Nebraska's doing this year, next year. And so this is a building year, and I think that they're going to fare better than Nebraska did last year in terms of record, because I really think they'll get to 7. 8 won't flabbergast me if they get to 8. I'd be a little surprised if they get to 8, but it won't completely blow me away. I would expect 7, and if they do, then we can feel really good about where they're going, because it takes time offensively to make that big a switch in terms. But there's not been one game in these first 4 where I've stood there and watched them and go, oh, like Michigan last year. Oh my gosh, this game needs to get over. They're going to beat them by 100.
Let's go home.
They have matched up physically, from a speed perspective, all of that with really, really good football teams. And we were talking at the commercial, the record of the teams they've played, the only loss of any of those teams against a non-ranked opponent was Arizona's loss to BYU. Every other loss by the teams they've played has been to ranked teams, and highly ranked teams at that. So they don't have anything to be ashamed of. Should they be 2-2? They make one more play in one of those games, they are, and then we're all happy.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with where they are. I felt good coming out of West Virginia. Now that I've watched the film, I feel even better. And now that I've thought through what Nebraska went through, I get it, and I'm feeling a lot better about things.
Blaine Fowler bringing it in Studio B. Uncle B in Studio B. It just sounds right, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Studio Uncle B.
Can we just rename it Uncle B instead of Studio B?
Studio Blaine.
Here in Uncle
We're
B.
coming to you from Uncle B.
Blaine, great stuff, man. Watch
Thanks,
him on
guys.
After Further Review tonight, 7 Eastern, 5 Mountain Time.